Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Embracing the End of Life, A Journey into Dying and Awakening by Patt Lind-Kyle, M.A., narrated by Randye, Kaye. Publisher's note: in this audio edition, you may hear references to visual elements present in the print and ebook formats of the book. Foreword by Karen Wyatt, M.D. In my years of working with dying patients as a hospice physician, I saw ample evidence of the death denial that exists in our society. Many of my patients had never even considered the fact that they would one day face their own death and were totally unprepared when they reached life's end. They had to struggle to heal relationships, find meaning in life, and cope with fears of the unknown in the very last moments of their existence. Most of them had lived life in an unconscious manner as well, and had failed to grasp the deeper lessons of their experiences and engage fully in the entire spectrum life had offered them. These are the people the renowned Buddhist teacher Sogyal Rinpoche referred to when he wrote, "Most people die unprepared for death, as they have lived unprepared for life." The fear of death is part of our human nature, but doesn't serve us well in our individual lives when we fail to contemplate and embrace our own mortality. In addition, this lack of death awareness has harmed our entire planet, as we have existed without respect for the fragility and fleetingness of all life, have taken more than needed from the Earth's limited resources, and have failed to honor the natural balance of the ecosystem. When we ignore the importance of death in the life cycle, we hinder the flourishing of creativity in our own lives and also in the natural world. For our own evolution and the survival of the planet, it is essential to confront the denial of death and transcend the limitations of our fears. Los Angeles funeral director Caitlin Doughty once mentioned in an interview that the denial of death is a luxury of living in a first world nation. She went on to say that had we been born in India, we would view death as a natural part of life as a result of witnessing it on a daily basis, from beggars dying on the streets to family members dying in the home to crematory pyres floating continuously along the Ganges River. But we in Western society have not had this lifelong exposure to death and must intentionally educate ourselves to overcome our intrinsic death phobia. Those who recognize their own mortality may be inspired to prepare for the end of life, but have little idea where to begin or how to confront their fears and limited knowledge about dying and death. Fortunately, Patt Lind-Kyle's groundbreaking book, Embracing the End of Life, The Journey into Dying and Awakening, offers the precise guidance needed for the contemplation of death, along with the tools to actually transcend fear and discover the joy of living an awakened and aware life. With her background in East-West psychology and extensive research in right-left brain function, Lind-Kyle is perfectly suited to guide one across the bridge between life and death. She combines her academic knowledge with the wisdom attained from her 35-year practice of meditation in the Theravada tradition to provide a richly interwoven mind-body-spirit approach to death and dying. In addition, her life-changing book is both inspirational and practical, with specific exercises to explore the roots of fear, age-related meditations, and descriptions of Enneagram and brain frequency patterns for various stages of life. This book informs one not only about the physical, psychological, and spiritual aspects of the dying process, but also inspires the examination of emotions and beliefs about death through a series of written reflections. These exercises form the guideposts for a journey into deeper and deeper death awareness that results in expanded consciousness as well. Ultimately, one is not only prepared for what the dying process may entail, but also equipped with a new mindset toward death and specific practices necessary for navigating unknown terrain at the end of life. Furthermore, a wealth of practical resources is offered for caregiving, legal document preparation, and support of the dying from various religious perspectives. Embracing the End of Life offers a beautiful gift for those who follow its recommended exercises, the opportunity to become enlightened about death long before this wisdom is needed. Transcending the fear of death in this way allows much more room for creativity, joy, and the freedom to finally live in a fully awakened state. Patt Lind-Kyle writes, "Death is one of the most precious experiences you will ever have in this life." It turns out, her book informs us, that death is actually the key to life, and there is no more important lesson for us to learn. As a guidebook for the journey from birth to death, Embracing the End of Life serves as a wise companion for those who dare to live deeply into the mysteries of life and death, with eyes wide open and mind fully centered in the present moment. This innovative and comprehensive book has the power to change the perception of death for the individual and for society as a whole as we confront the most fundamental question of our humanity. How do we live while knowing we will die? Listen to this book now to transform how you live for the rest of your days, and then keep it on your bookshelf as a resource to consult over and over again on your own journey into dying and awakening. Karen Wyatt, M.D., author of What Really Matters: 7 Lessons for Living from the Stories of the Dying. Introduction. Why are we interested in the end of our life? If you accept that death is part of life, then when it actually does come, you may face it more easily. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. A few years ago, I went through an extraordinary experience of confronting the end of my life. The experience started during a heat wave at home in California. I had a 2-hour appointment in a very cold, air-conditioned office. When I left the office, I walked out into the afternoon summer heat. When I started my car, the temperature gauge read 99 degrees. I didn't open the windows to let out the hot air, and I drove for a while before turning on the air conditioner. It took me a while to get home as I made stops for several errands, getting out of the car into the heat and then getting back into the car heat. As I neared home, I started to feel awful. I had a headache, felt fatigued, and had an upset stomach. When I finally got home, I felt even worse. I searched the internet and found that I probably had a condition called heat exhaustion. I made a telephone call and was warned by a doctor friend to stay in a cool place, be quiet, drink liquids, and rest because my condition could develop into heat stroke. This meant a heat stroke could damage my brain, heart, kidneys, and muscles, as well as increase my risk of other serious complications, leading to death. My doctor friend said that I needed to maintain a balance in my body temperature for at least 2 weeks. This news of needing to rest for 2 weeks was very disturbing to me. Months before, I had made plans for a month-long meditation retreat outside of Boston. I was scheduled to fly from my home in California to the East Coast within the week. Given my heat exhaustion, I was anxious about going on the retreat as I read that the East Coast was in an intense, humid heat wave. Even with my condition, I still decided to go. Fortunately, by the time I got on the plane, I was feeling better. In the Boston airport, the evening news on a TV monitor announced, "This weather is the most humid heat wave the East has experienced in years." I immediately took an air-conditioned shuttle and arrived at my retreat destination at 8 p.m. When I got out of the shuttle, I was stunned by the heat and humidity. The night heat, together with the humidity, was off the charts, and I could feel my anxiety about heat exhaustion percolate and rise. The next morning, I began to have the same heat symptoms I'd had at home. My room did not have air conditioning, but the meditation hall did. As I went back and forth between the heat and the cold, the heat exhaustion symptoms got worse. I was now in the same boat I'd been in at home, but it was not the boat I wanted to be in. My body did not feel good, and I didn't know what to do. I became increasingly anxious and scared. The symptoms were getting worse each day, as was my anxiety. The third night after arriving at the center, I woke up in a state of terror at about 2 a.m. This is the time at the retreat center when there are no teachers and no one else available to contact. I was totally alone. The 25 other meditators were in their individual rooms. I had been in many long retreats and had experienced fear and anxiety before as I struggled with thoughts and emotions, but this was different. I felt the tension, fear, constriction of breath, and all the heat symptoms welling up inside of me. I was increasingly confused and full of terror. The question kept coming, what do I do? I tried to meditate, do yoga, sing softly to myself, and listen to my meditation music. Nothing worked. The inner voice kept saying, "How can I stop this terror? What should I do?" Finally, I sat up in bed and questioned myself. "Pat, what is making you so frightened, so anxious, that it's driving you into complete terror?" The answer came quickly. I am frightened to die. I remember saying to myself, well, there is nothing I can do now, so I might as well die. With that, I laid my head down on my pillow, pulled the covers over me, and went to sleep. I slept soundly until my alarm rang for breakfast. I got up, free of the heat exhaustion symptoms and also of the terror. What happened? After a lot of reflection on this event, I realized that I had confronted pieces of this terror of death in many of my long meditation retreats. With the threat of heat stroke and the physical symptoms growing in me, I finally faced that inner terror, looked it straight in the eyes, and let it go. As I faced the fear directly, I called its bluff, and the fear, physical symptoms, and terror vanished. I felt free. This was not a mental or even an emotional reaction, as I realized in some deep place within that death had been stalking me for a long time. As long as I pushed this unconscious fear of death away, I was stuck in growing terror. In a real way, the heat and terror were my friends to help me face this deep part of my life and open me to sense my inner freedom. The next day, I told my teacher what had occurred, and she supported me that I had been very courageous. Of course, I am quite aware that someday I will physically die. There is no doubt that death will come for me, as for everyone. I know that my body will get a disease, or I will wither away from old age, or perhaps die in an accident. What this experience and awareness left me with were burning questions that kept repeating in my head throughout the month-long retreat. What happens to the mind when I die? Where does it go? What quality of mind is imperative for me to be in as I die? I remember reading a quote from a spiritual teacher that helped me focus to contemplate these questions. Although I am not a follower of Osho, when I read this quote, it gave me a direction to search out the type of mind we need when we leave the body and go on to our next journey. He said, "Remember, Only that which you can take with you when you leave the body is important. That means, except meditation, nothing is important. Except awareness, nothing is important, because only awareness cannot be taken away by death. Everything else will be snatched away, because everything else comes from without. Only awareness wells up within. That cannot be taken away. And the shadows of awareness, compassion, love, they cannot be taken away. They are intrinsic parts of awareness. You will be taking with you only whatsoever awareness you have attained. That is your only real wealth. From my research into many spiritual traditions and my own meditation experience as well as scientific research, it has become clear to me that when we die, we take only our inner qualities that, hopefully, we have been cultivating all our lives. Osho indicates that meditation is a key and a means to develop awareness of these inner qualities we need for our death and rebirth, whatever that rebirth will be for each of us. During that month of retreat, I kept asking these two questions. What is this awareness I gain from meditation? How do I continue to develop it? As these questions repeated in my mind, I came to discover that when awareness is found and developed, it cannot be taken away. In the months after the retreat, a deep yearning pressed me forward to find answers to my questions about death and to find the steps that would help others find their own answers. Something new was arising in me, and I was excited that I was birthing a new process for myself and perhaps for others. I no longer wanted to seek outside myself for inspiration, but rather to follow the inner lead of guidance of this force I was experiencing. Like a flashing mental sign, I kept saying, "Death is the next big journey in my life." I became conscious that time was of the essence. I wanted to develop those inner qualities of awareness, of peace and serenity without a mental struggle and without emotional terror when I came to my dying. This journey to understand and explore the practical and spiritual aspects of death and dying has become my passion and mission for my own sake and to share with others. Let me pause to say that my exploration of my own death and the passion to help others face their death followed many years of critical illness, long meditation retreats exploring the fears and darkness of my inner world, hospice training in which I volunteered with the dying in a hospice hospital and home hospice, counseling people facing their own death, and being present for the death of both my father and my mother. Now, later in life, the opportunity arrived for me to put together my life experience in a manner that could help others face this doorway called death that each of us will walk through. This guidebook is the result of my journey. Along with the research I did on dying, the moments of death itself, and what is beyond our dying process, this book is also the result of my inner discovery. My research led me to explore and develop a map of the physical, psychological, and spiritual journey of both death and spiritual awakening. Through the descriptions of others who have explored the process of dying, I discovered that in going through the journey of death, we are transformed. What the transformation through death means is to die and awaken to be free of affliction. When you die and the quality of your mind is consciously aware, that gives you inner peace, a feeling of calm, serenity, and a release of fear into a deep comforting of inner love. In the dying process, your mind goes through the most important spiritual experience of your entire lifetime. What became clear as I researched the dying process is the understanding that there is a release or a letting go that we can do to be free and live a fuller life now. Without a doubt, I became convinced that while I am alive, I must train my mind to let go, both for how I live now and for my death. The purpose of this inner preparation to die is to develop the quality of a conscious mind now. One of the reasons I was so frightened of dying was that my mind was not prepared for the process of death. I had the direct experience that I was frightened of the unknown because of the incredible fear surrounding death that our culture teaches. I felt alienated and disconnected from death, so I avoided the idea of death and kept focused on outer world activities, believing that someday, without conscious awareness, life would be snatched away from me. However, the Dalai Lama has given us an important reminder. If you are mindful at death, it will not come as a surprise. You will not be anxious. You will feel that death is merely like changing your clothes. Consequently, at that point, you will be able to maintain your calmness of mind. In our culture, we know we will die, but at the same time, we all tend to deny it, ignore it, and cover it up in many ways. How to prepare for death is not talked about or focused on, even by our doctors, caregivers, and religious teachers. But I also see this cover-up changing with the emergence of death cafes, conversations about death with dignity laws, and films and books about death. Also, because there is a growing pressure from the aging boomer generation as death is arriving at their generational shore, there is what is being called a death awareness movement, or DAM. Even though there is a growing awareness about death at a cultural and societal level, there are core questions I believe each of us needs to explore at a personal level. Some of these questions you may have already confronted. Other questions may not be in awareness for you. Here are some of the critical questions I've asked myself as I began to write this book, and now ask you in order to help you begin to frame your thoughts and feelings as we begin this journey of exploration. One or more of these questions may stand out to you now. However, we will explore all of them and more over the course of the book. Do you have a fear of death? And if so, how do you work with that fear? What in your life keeps you from dealing with the practical issues of preparing for your death? How do you prepare your mind and emotions to confront your dying when it begins to happen to you? Would you be willing to give up your power to the medical community to continue heroic methods to preserve your life in ways that keep you from a peaceful and conscious dying process? How do you prepare for the actual moment of your death and what may lie beyond your dying, whatever your beliefs? What legal preparations do you need to create now for your eventual death? Those of us in Western society are generally disconnected from ourselves as to what we feel, as well as lost and adrift when it comes to the reality of the meaning of our death and what the process will be of our death. Generally, there is little around us in our families, friends, and society at large to help us understand and make critical choices about the death process other than medical decisions. The current approach to the dying process centers primarily on the medical model of mitigating pain and not on dealing with the inner fear and suffering that arises in moving through the various stages of death. This medical model highlights alienation from the actual fact of death. That alienation is what you might face if you are not prepared for your dying process. Death is simply one more aspect of being a human being. In our culture, we've made death a taboo. As our society pushes the fear of death away from us and hides it in hospitals, hospice facilities, and nursing homes, I decided to develop a map of the physical dying process in order to understand what I would face at death. My effort in this research and the accompanying practices I've developed have been done to alleviate my own fear of dying and to help others who are interested in exploring this area of their life. My previous book, Heal Your Mind, Rewire Your Brain, examined the functions of the brain waves and the wealth of growing research about the brain-mind relationship. As I got deeper into the research on death and what is occurring in the brain and mind, more clarity came on how the mind progresses through the dying stages and how it unravels at death. This discovery answered one of my core questions. The process of my research showed me that as the body goes through a transformation at death, so does the mind. I realized that if the mind is trained to be aware and continually conscious, then the dying process is the most powerful spiritual experience and opportunity of our lifetime. You need to know enough ahead of the time of your death process to be willing to work with your mind and to have challenging discussions with your family, with medical people, and with your friends to prepare you and others for what is to come at your death. The path toward death. There are two kinds of courage when you face sickness, aging, and death. The first type of courage is to confront the truth and reality of your mortality so as not to be fearful. The second is to act on the truth you find. The path toward your death is frequently unclear because you do not know what will happen, so it is hard to know what to do. The challenge is to explore your unique path toward your own death and how you want to face it. My dream is that this book will increase your courage to unwind the challenge of your own death, and that you will learn and know the truth of your own path for yourself. In the course of the material I present about death, I will also discuss the journey beyond death. My bias is that there is a something that is experienced beyond our physical death. This view comes from my exploration of many spiritual traditions, my own inner experience of traversing many levels of mind states in meditation, the growing body of research of brain states at death, and the experience of people that return from the dead, called a near-death experience. Whether or not you believe in an afterlife, however, preparing mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and practically for this inevitable event provides clarity, strength, and understanding for how you choose to approach your dying process and how you awake to your dying today. The focus of the book assumes you want to learn about your own death process, or you are concerned about those in your life who are dying of old age or of some illness. The information and exercises will also be helpful if you or someone in your life has had a sudden health event, such as a heart attack, or lost a loved one in a car accident. Understanding what happens at the moment of death helps prepare for sudden death or protracted illness. In the case of sudden death, information on how to recognize after-death experience is even more vital to this journey into dying and awakening. I decided to call this book a guidebook instead of simply a book because I wanted to help guide you to explore the key questions of your own process and discover the outer as well as the inner conditions of preparing for your death and your awakening to a more vital life now. The book is designed to have you create your own guidebook of how you want to prepare for your dying and living now if you desire to do so. As a guidebook, the exercises, visualizations, meditations, and, if you choose to use them, the bonus videos will help you explore and question your personal understandings and values about death, how to engage caregivers and family in what you want as you go through the dying process, how to establish practices and ways to give yourself feedback about your inner explorations, and the very practical preparation of financial and legal issues to attend to. You will be presented with information, questions, and exercises to think and write about. I encourage you to get a notebook or a journal or put a file on your computer that is devoted.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?